Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today's going to be the update to the burn build, the Magicka Dragonknight for the Flames of Ambition DLC. Now this build has been around for a very long time, but it still is sticking to its original design. The idea is to get into this build as fast as possible, so you can use crafted gear or non-trial gear, no trouble whatsoever. However, if you do want to swap out for some trial stuff, there's going to be options for that. But essentially, any player at any level can get into this, set everything on fire, give nice buffs and bonuses to your group, have single target and AoE combined, and we've also covered our sustain as well. Lots of people struggle with resources on the Mag DK. We are not going to struggle there. There's going to be some options for that too. So if you want to set everything on fire and see more of this, stay tuned. It's coming right up. So, first of all, we're going to go into the stats. Let's put our potions on. Actually, we've got a little buff here that we'll show really quickly. We'll be very quick with this. Spell damage is currently 3853. That will actually go up a substantial amount, but we've got a buff there, but never mind. 36.3k max Magicka, 25k max health, and 14k max stamina. Yes, of course, all that will go up if you're in groups with buffs and bonuses and all that good stuff. 1.2k recovery, which is actually very high, and 17.6k spell resistance with 9.2k physical resistance. Of course, if you have a resistance buff, that will go up as well. 61% crit chance, straight off, obviously with a potion running. And of course, you can enhance that as well. There will be options for that. But once we get into combat, once you get your buffs and bonuses, that will go up to about 65, 66%. If we do have some other options that we'll go over later, you can go way over 70. 64 points into maximum Magicka, and we're using max health, max magic food with a Thief Munderstone. Now, the food itself, you can obviously alter if you want to. This stuff has the highest flat bonuses as blue food goes, with max health and max Magicka combined. This stuff has less max Magicka, but a lot more recovery. But you do have to bear in mind, of course, you will have no health bonus with this, so you'll be very, very squishy. Some people like to use this, some people don't. If you use the sustainable rotation, shall we say, because that's going to be explained later, this stuff you can use all day long, you'll never struggle. But the choice is, of course, up to you. Now, I'm going to go into the skills in detail. Everything is, of course, going to be explained. I will explain the design of the build and the reason for the skills and why they're morphed that way and all that kind of stuff. You may need to kind of pay very close attention to some of these individual choices, but if you know all this stuff anyway, you've been using burn for a while, of course you can go ahead and skip this bit and get to the gear. Entirely up to you. So, first off, we are using Burning Embers, bread and butter for the DK. Gotta have this. Second ability to unlock in the Ardent Flame skill line starts off as Searing Strike, morph it to Burning Embers. This is very simple. It's direct damage initially, just one hit, and it will apply a burn-in status effect, which is a single target damage over time effect. Very nice. But after the initial hit has landed, you have a 14-second damage over time flame effect. If this runs out, or if you recast it over top of its old one, so it's run out basically, it's a new one, you will heal based on the amount of damage inflicted. So if it's been running for its full duration, you'll get a massive heal. If it's been running for a short time, you'll get a smaller one. You can use this as a very quick, I'm in trouble, get some health back button during its duration, or you can just let it do its work. Entirely up to you, but it's very, very strong. It's single target, but you can put it on multiples. So if you do put this on 3 targets at once, when each one dies or each one runs out, then you get 3 heals. Very handy. Barb Trap is next. Yes, this is on the front bar on purpose. We'll come to that when we get to the passives before anyone starts screaming. Last ability to unlock in the Fighters Guild skill line starts off as Trap Beast, morph it to Barbed Trap. This is single target damage over time in form of physical damage, and it lasts for 18 seconds, but it has an initial hit as well. And this will give you minor force. You'll have minor force the whole time that this 18-second duration is running. Even if the enemy dies and the beast trap is gone, you'll still get this buff, which means any crit damage we do is enhanced. It can immobilize targets, but only if they can be immobilized. If they can't, don't worry, it will still do its damage and give you minor force as well. Next is Degeneration in the Mages Guild skill line. This is a swap out, but we're going to go over these next 2 skills kind of together, because these 2 here are your major swapping skills if you choose to. It depends on how advanced you are inside content. Not just for the dummy, because that's a waste of time anyway. If you're not using it in content, don't use it on the dummy. But if you are using it in content, these are going to be able to be swapped around. So, first of all, degeneration. It's a single target damage over time, and it gives you major sorcery. We've got those in our potions anyway, so it's not massive. So you can swap this for entropy if you want. So structured entropy, that will give you a heal instead, but it'll still do the same damage. But it's single target magic damage. Next up is Inner Light. Now this just stays on our bar for 5% Magicka increase, which will enhance our overall DPS, of course, because now our stats are higher. However, if you don't want to use this, and you are more advanced, and you do think you can keep this in your rotation, you can, of course, put Scalding Rune there. Now, while you're keeping up a very static rotation, technically you could swap Degeneration for Scalding Rune at any point in time if you have lots of AoE targets to face. So single target Degeneration, area of effect, this will actually put a dot on multiple targets and have a blast, so it's one or the other. But if you can combine the two, great. These two slots are where you want to put those. If, however, you are not so advanced and you are struggling with your resources and you just can't maintain for whatever reason, there is a very, very valid and very useful, for lots of different reasons, swap out for this skill here. What you can do is you can either keep Degeneration or just keep a passive bonus and swap this skill out for Chains. If you do that, you need to go to the Ardent Flame skill line, unlock Unrelenting Grip, and put that here. Again, remember, if you want to use this dot for either one of the two, you can. Single target Degeneration, AoE Scalding Rune, or you can just have it as Inner Light. But what's going to happen now is you are going to have the ability to use a spammable for free. If enemies can be chained, you'll pull them to your feet, which is handy for the tank because now they can now pin them and taunt them, which is, it's free for them, great. But if the enemy can't be pulled, maybe they're CC immune because you just pulled them in, or maybe they're a boss, which means they're CC immune. This is free. This is a free spammable. Control the room and free spammable all at once. Not to mention, of course, in some content, you need chainers. Or used to, whichever. If you go down this route, that's going to benefit your next skill. So you can see these are all bouncing off each other, depending on which way you want to take it. But Molten Whip, first ability in here, Morph from Lava Whip, has a bonus. Every single time you use an Ardent Flame ability while it's on your bar, you will stack up 75 weapon and spell damage. Up to 3 times. No more. Any consistent spamming will just maintain the 5-second buff and keep it going. If you use the whip, it will consume it. So you'll hit much, much harder with a special whip, but it will take away the buff. So what do we do here? If you were using the 2 dots here, or just 1 dot and Inner Light, eventually you'd have some stacks here to take advantage of the bigger whip to take away those stacks. But you can't really control it apart from maybe once per rotation. However, instead of spamming this and never getting the bonus apart from maybe once, you can apply this 3 times, then whip. Apply it 3 times, then whip. So your free spammable stacks up the spell damage 3 times, then you take advantage of the big one. This will allow you to sustain indefinitely. Will you drop 3 or 4k DPS overall on single target for not having the extra dot? Sure, sometimes, if crits aren't on your side. Or sometimes if they are. But if you're consistent with this, you'll always have the big whip controlled, and you'll always have your resources and the ability to pull ads in to help your group if you really want to. So again, this is a choice for you depending on how you'd like to play. I'll go over this when we get to the rotation later, but this is actually very, very useful and does pump out a decent amount of damage regardless of it being a CC type ability. But to keep it simple, if you really want to, again, you can just keep Inner Light on the bar and spam the whip. You won't get the big one very often, but at least you'll be able to keep that spammable up. Now, if you are having issues with your survival, you can change the morph of the whip, in which case everything I just told you is useless, and you'll just have a spammable whip that occasionally heals you. If the target goes off balance, you'll do a wicked backflip. Up to you. But if you choose this one, you are going to want to double bar it. So you need it here as well. I'll explain that when we get there in a minute. Shooting Star on the front bar from the Mages Guild. Doesn't matter which morph it is, put it on your bar. You get increased bonuses to stats from the passives. However, if you do activate Shooting Star, all the enemies hit will give you 12 ultimate back. We use our back bar ultimate pretty much all the time, so this is irrelevant. But if you want to, I would go Shooting Star. Failing that, just get Mages Guild 10 and put this on your bar no matter what morph it is for the passives. Also, if you'd like to survive a bit more, you could swap it for Magma Shell just in case you're in trouble. Now the back bar. We're going to go over Molten Whip again. The reason for it being on this bar and this one, remember you must fire 3 Ardent Flame abilities to max out its spell damage before you get the big extra damage whip. You can't do that if you don't have it on the bar. It must be on the bar. And here, we've got 2 Ardent Flame abilities and 1 ultimate, but we've also got an Ardent Flame ability here. So if we're on our back bar and we go this skill, that's 2 stacks. Swap bars, yes it carries over. Then this skill, that's 3. Now we've got a whip. Now if we hit this 3 times as well, we've got another one. So we can guarantee 2 major whips on the front bar every single time. If you don't have this, and you don't have this on the back bar, you won't get them. And if you don't have this here, you'll only ever get 1 per rotation. That will make more sense when we get to the rotation, but you have to double bar it if you're going to use this. Some builds you don't necessarily need that, but the way we're building this, you do. If that is the case, you may want to put on a damage shield, or you're going to have to keep an eye on this to keep yourself alive. Next is Unstable Wall of Elements. This is from the Destruction Staff skill line. Very simply put, you put this on the ground. Second ability you unlock starts off as Wall of Elements, morph it to Unstable Wall of Elements. On the ground, anyone caught inside of this will take damage over time every 1 second in the form of fire damage. Now, if they are burning, which they most likely will be because we're going to have so much fire, they will take more damage from this skill. It will explode at the end, or if you recast it. But if you do find your rotation is somewhat slow or lacking and this keeps falling off too much, you can swap it for Elemental Blockade instead. Bear in mind, you will lose damage because you won't have the extra burst at the end, but you will gain duration on it, allowing for extra uptime from your glyph and your back bar weapon, which we'll come to later. It's about simplicity. It's not going to make or break the build either way. It's just a case of which one you choose. You must keep this down all the time, though. Engulf and Flames is next. Now, this is here to buff your group, by the way. Third ability you unlock in the Ardent Flame skill line starts off as Fiery Breath, morph it to Engulfing Flames. This will do damage over time to all targets hit. Initially, it's area of effect direct damage, then it will put a damage over time, single target damage over time, of flame damage on each target caught. This will be a maximum of 6, by the way. The AoE can hit uncapped amount. The single target damage over time, because it applies a buff or debuff to it, will actually only hit 6 targets. But affected enemies will take more flame damage from everyone who hits them while this is on them, up to a maximum of 10% extra. And this is based on your offensive stats. So the higher your spell damage and your magicka and all that kind of stuff, the higher they are, the stronger this is. It's not based off of one flat resource. It's offensive stats overall. Now, at the moment, without any buffs on, we're sitting on 9%. Once you actually put your potion on, your buffs on, you start fighting, this will go 10% straight away. It's no problem whatsoever. But you have to have fairly high stats to do this. We have a massive amount of spell damage. It wasn't shown in the stat sheet. We were almost on 4k. Once we have our glyph running on both of our sets, we can actually go way over 6. Keep it up on the target all the time. It's a very long duration. It's not hard to maintain. Now, next up is Flames of Oblivion. Last one in the skill line. Very, very long to unlock this, but make sure you get it as soon as you can. Starts off as Inferno, morph it to Flames of Oblivion. Not the other one. That's a heal. This will fire a fireball at one enemy, unless there's more than one, in which case it will hit 2, every 5 seconds, and it lasts for 15 seconds. So 1 hit initially, and then 1 every 5 seconds afterwards. And this also scales off of your highest offensive stat. So whether you're Magicka or Stamina, you can use this. It does give us Major Prophecy and Savagery for being on the bar, but we've got that on the front bar anyway, so you don't actually need that if you're using Inner Light. And of course, the back bar, we're not going to be there long enough to necessarily benefit from it. Just bear in mind, of course, if you are using Inner Light on the front bar, you can actually get away with tripods because you are going to be using Major Sorcery from this anyway, so you'll have Prophecy on both bars and you've got that covered. That is a choice. That can be up to you. I mean, the website is going to have all your different options anyway, but you can jiggle this around to suit your own playstyle quite easily. Eruption is finally on the bar before we get to the alternate. This is in our Earth and Heart skill line, and this passive skill line here is so important. Make sure you pay attention to this coming up in a moment. But this is Ash Cloud, morph it to Eruption. Basically, big AoE damage to start with in direct, but it's area of effect. And then it will put a long-durated damage over time on the ground with a snare attached to it. Anyone caught inside of this is slow and damage at the same time for 18 seconds. You will need to use this every second rotation, not every one rotation, because of the length of time this lasts. Now, the back bar ultimate is very important. This is our main one. We don't use the front one unless it's the end of the fight and you've got not enough for the back bar. We basically use this as much as we can. Put it on the ground, and enemies inside of this will take damage over time for 20 seconds in the form of fire. Lots of fire, but an extra bonus to this. If you're standing inside of this, all the damage that you do to any target, regardless of whether they're in the banner or not, will take 15% more damage. And also, while you're inside of it, you will take 15% less damage. There's a synergy attached to this as well, so people can take that and immobilize targets to the banner, but essentially this is your damage boost ultimate. Drop it, continue with your rotation, and everything you do, or was doing already, or were doing already rather, check out my English, will be enhanced. So very, very powerful indeed. Make sure you use this as much as you possibly can. Yes, of course, you can swap out for other ultimates if you choose, but this one is stupidly strong. Make sure you use it as much as possible. Now, we are going to get to passives, and these will start making a bit more sense, hopefully. Remember, you've got lots of swap outs here. You can use this or the AoE dot. You can use this or just keep it for inner light. And you can use this or you can use the heal version, in which case you can swap this for a damage shield. But here's the important stuff. This increases your damage of your burning and poison status effects. Yes, as a Dragon Knight, if you do burning or poison, which you will actually have stronger versions of the status effect versus every other class in the game. Also, if the enemy is burning, a new burning status effect that you apply will give you 500 Magicka back. A new poison status effect you apply will give you 500 stamina back. There's going to be options for that. When you deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, and all of them do hit direct to start with, you will snare the enemy. Increases the damage over time of Fiery Breath, Siren Strike, and Dragon Knight standard abilities by 33%, and increases their duration. So this here, and your banner are all affected. And increases the damage of your Flame Area of Effect abilities. That's very important. This is Area of Effect. Our Wall of Elements is Area of Effect. Eruption is Area of Effect. And the initial hit from Engulfing Flames is also. So that will buff them all. Draconic Power, we're not really using any of these abilities, but you are going to want some of the passives. This increases the amount of damage you can block. This will give you a heal and received bonus if you have any of these abilities slotted on your active at the moment, which we kind of don't. But, I mean, if you really wanted to and you wanted to put a resist buff on, you could activate this and benefit from it. But if you're not using any whatsoever, then, of course, don't bother. And this increases your health recovery, again, if you have any slotted, which we don't. But it does increase your melee attack range by 2 meters. And we are using melee attacks. If you choose to, if we go down a daggers route, obviously that counts. So that will give you increased range. But not to mention, of course, the whip itself is quite short range. But we've now got 7 meters out of it instead of 5 due to this. Even if you're not using Draconic Power skills, you are going to want this passive. And this will increase your spell resistance. Earthen Heart is essential. This increases the duration of the abilities from this bar. Skill line, rather. So this, obviously, is enhanced. And that is, as well, your Immortal button if you really want to use it. If you use any ultimate, the cost of it is considered. What I mean by that is, every single point it costs, you will get 46 of every resource back. So you can actually heal, get magic back, and stand back all at the same time for dropping your banner. Now, the front bar ultimate, if you don't have enough to fire the back, will still benefit you with this, but it costs less, so it's not going to be as impactful. But what you need to do on this is you need to make sure that you fire your banner during your rotation, not right at the beginning. So if you just drop the banner before any dots are down, first of all, you didn't have any damage running to enhance. Secondly, you just filled full bars. Nuke some of your resources with them skills, then drop an ultimate, and it all comes back. It's about efficiency. When you cast an Earthen Heart ability, your group will get minor brutality for 20 seconds, increasing their weapon damage by 10%, and each time you cast one within 6 seconds of the last one or longer, you will get 3 ultimate back. We're going to use this once every 18 seconds, minor brutality for the group all day long. Also, bear in mind, I don't use Earthen Heart on my toxicity build. That's because if you have this dude in the group at the same time, it's covered. Also, you'll get stamina back for using the ability as well. Every single time you use an Earthen Heart ability, off cooldown, as long as it's not a stand-based one, you will get 990 stand back. Now, we are using the destruction staff on both bars, but there is an option for dual wield. If you go with dual wield, it's entirely up to you, but you don't want any of these skills. Yeah, you can see I test other stuff too. But what you do need is some of the passives. So you'll want this one, which will increase your offhand. You will want this one, which increases your damage against low health targets, because your lights and heavy attacks do count. You won't need this one because we're not using any skills from the skill line. You will need this because it enhances the damage output during CC, and you will need this because it will enhance the amount of crit that we have because there are daggers. Each dagger will give you 8/12 crit chance. Yes, that's Magicka and physical crit chance. So if you do go dual wield, you're going to want every passive except for this one. If you don't go dual wield, you just saved yourself 8 points. We'll stick to the basics. Trifocus is very important. Fully charged heavy attack with a flame staff gives you 12% additional damage to that heavy attack. It's only single target. It can crit or not crit. Up to you, but it will give you resources back, so you have some extra damage for free. Increases your destruction staff ability penetration, basically. Your light attacks, your heavy attacks, and your wall of elements. Increases your chance to apply elemental status effects. We have a heightened chance to apply any elemental status effects that we are messing with, mostly fire for us, which means more burn-in status effects, which means each time we cast a new one, it's 500 magic back, and each time we have one running, then that's more damage because it's damage over time. When you have an Inferno staff equipped, all of your direct or single target, in fact, not direct, your single target abilities are stronger. So, while this is single target, so is this, so is this, so is this, so is this. Flames of Oblivion is single target, this is not. Engulf and Flames initially is area of effect direct, but the damage over time is single target. Wall of Elements isn't, but the whip is there anyway, you know about that one. If you do use the rune, the blast area of effect is not direct or single target, but the damage over time per target is single target. So again, the Flame Staff utilizes pretty much everything we're doing. We do have a little bit of AoE and some kind of fall off AoE from some of the skills, but overall we have an abundance of single target damage, and the same applies to your lights and heavies. And finally, if you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability, you restore Magicka. And that can happen once every 10 seconds, but of course you've got a damage shield bonus there. That only applies to the ice staff because we don't get damage shields from our flame staff. We are using nothing but light armor. Can you change this with your monster set and change them to medium or heavy or anything like that? Sure, of course you can, but we're not. These are penalties and bonuses that you can read through in your own time. They were altered in an update recently, but essentially just know what you're getting when it comes to going full light. You'll be a bit squishier, you'll be a lot more nimble, but of course you've got some pluses and minuses there. But the most important things we're going to go over are these. This will reduce your effectiveness of snares and reduce the cost of sprint. This will increase your mag recovery per piece and reduction to cost, so your resource sustainability is there. This will increase your spell resistance, so we're very tanky for spell damage even. This increases your crit chance per piece worn, so the more pieces, the higher the crit. And this will increase your penetration. So higher pen goes through more resistances, do more damage. If you want to go ultra squish, 7 light is very, very good as long as you can survive it. If not, you might want to alter your monster set a little bit and have maybe some heavy stuff in there. Just bear in mind what you lose or gain if you do that. Fighters Guild is important. I know lots of people scream that you have to have Beast Trap on the back bar. We want to use this ultimate as much as possible because then we can manage our resources better and do more damage. If we have Fighters Guild ability on the front, that means we have access to this. Banish the Wicked. You get 3 ulti per kill if the kill is done on this bar. How often do you kill stuff on your back bar? Not often. So if I have it here and I always get kills here, I won't have that passive. Might look nice on a dummy to alter things for the sake of damage numbers, but when it actually comes to content, you need to make sure you get your ulti up because you want to be able to use this banner as much as possible. So definitely have this on the front. Also, you're going to want Intimidate and Presence because that will reduce the cost of the skill, and you're going to want this as well. This does increase the weapon damage by 3% for you for each Fighter's Guild ability slotted. Granted, we don't really use a lot of weapon damage, but while this is here, this will enhance the strength of this skill, and we do have strong damage over time. And if you are using dual wield, it will increase obviously your weapon damage to benefit those lights and heavies. You can get this, which increases the damage of this versus Undead Daedra Werewolves, but that's not essential. Again, if you want to go for the minor bonuses, sure, get it. It's only 1 point. Major skill is very important. We are using stage 10, or level 10, but if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. But while you're getting there, you are going to want some of these passives. You are going to need this to reduce the cost of your major skill abilities, because they aren't too expensive, but they, over time, will add up. So you want to get this down. It's quite a substantial buff there. This increases your Mage's Guild ability duration, so that's very important. And this will give you 2% max Magicka and recovery for each one on your bar. Now, technically on the back bar, we don't have any, unless, of course, you're not going for Molten Whip, in which case you can change that to Inner Light, so you have extra Magicka on the back bar, or you can just change it to Damage Shield, up to you. But the front bar, we do have 2. Even if you have Inner Light, that will give you another 2%, so we can actually have 6 across the board. Or if it was Scald and Rune, again, you can have 6 across the board. It's up to you. There's lots of different ways to jiggle this particular build, depending on how comfortable you are. Also, if you activate a major skilled ability, and we will, for a short period of time, 3 seconds in fact, your light attacks and heavy attacks will be 40% stronger. During off balance, if you do a heavy attack while empowered, you've got 40% strength added from here, plus you've got 70% increase from off balance. So if you are trying to gain some resources back, prime opportunity to do it is just after a major skill during off balance period. Very nice indeed. Undaunted is very important. This here will give you 4% of your resources back when you take any synergy in the game. No cooldown whatsoever, take every synergy you can see. Also, this will increase your max health, stamina, and magicka for each different type of armor worn. We're only wearing one type, but if you do wear others, you will get a bonus to this. But again, bear in mind your pluses and minuses to your actual passives and your penalties and bonuses to the different types of armor themselves as default. We are a cat, you can see that. This build has been a cat for a long time, and then it went backwards and forwards, cat, high elf, cat, high elf. You can use whatever you like. Behind the target, I mean, you're going to have a crit bonus all the time if you have a certain champion point bonus. If not, the rest of it's flat damage anyway, so there's not really much in it. In full-out testing for this build, regardless of the version of it you use, regardless of the skill setup you use or the gear setup you use, every single race that was practiced and tried and tested, there was only about 2 or 3k in it either side, and sometimes that could fluctuate depending on crits anyway to even them out to be about the same. So, the Khajiit is very, very nice for multiple reasons. You have recovery for all 3 resources, you have flat stats for all 3 resources, and you have increased critical damage and heals. Really nice, you want to get those crits. But High Elf and Dark Elf did very, very well. They both had weapon and spell damage. The Orc has weapon and spell damage as well, also did very well, strangely enough. It's entirely up to you, you can use what you want. Some people like to use Breton for the survival and the resource management. It's not the end of the world either way. But he does look actually pretty cool with a cat, and that's coming from someone that doesn't like cats. Alchemy, of course, last passive. Medicinal use, we are going to be using potions. Now, whether you use tripots or spell pots, depending on the way you set your character up, you are going to want to have this because your potions, instead of lasting 37 seconds, will last 47. Which means they outdo their cooldown. So you can have your buffs from your potions up 100% of the time. If you're using potions at low magicka or low health or whatever, you're doing it wrong. Use them all the time. As soon as they're ready, pop them. So now we're going to get into the gear. Don't worry, there's going to be lots and lots of different variations to this. The rotation doesn't have to necessarily change for you depending on which one you take, regardless of the gear. You can get into this at any stage, but what you get from it is what you put out, basically. If you want to go with some of the more basic stuff, you're going to be on the lower end of the scale. If you want to go for the more advanced stuff, you're going to need a lot more practice and you can get more damage out of it. But lowest side, with full-out crafted gear, you can actually crack 80k with it, no problem whatsoever. With crafted gear. You want to go for the more advanced stuff, you can get closer to 90, but I'm going to show you all the different setups anyway. Now, the glyphs will alter depending on the setup you choose. So, first of all, Burn and Spellweave on the front bar only as a staff, a flame staff with weapon and spell damage increase, and you want the other 3 pieces to be either jewelry or body. Doesn't matter which, because it's all light armor anyway. If it's on the jewelry, you want to make sure you got 3 Bloodthirsty with spell damage on all 3. Regardless of your setup, the traits and glyph on your jewelry should be the same. Now, this will give you a buff to spell damage, 490 actually, for 8 seconds with a 12-second cooldown, so a 4-second gap, when your flame damage abilities apply a burn and status effect. That's going to happen a lot, especially since Burn and Embers automatically applies one. So this is a very big boost up front to burst spell damage. Very nice indeed. You'll have very good control over this. Plus it's got crit spell damage and magicka. And it's from City of Ash, so you can go on normal and farm it in a dungeon. Very simple. Now the other set we're using is Skaven Mage. That's for Imperial City Prison, which again you can do on normal, no trouble whatsoever, or you can use fragments and open up the chest at the beginning of the dungeon. You might get lucky. All of this can be farmed on normal, so very easy early access stuff. 2 spell crit bonuses, max magic bonus, and when you deal direct damage, not single target, direct, so direct AoE or direct single target, either one of the 2, so light attacks, your burst from your flame breath, your initial hit of engulfing flames, your chains, your whips, anything can fire this. So can your glyphs too, which will give you a further 516 spell damage for 5 seconds, and that can be reapplied every 5 as well. So this can actually have 100% uptime if you're very, very lucky. So while you'll have a 4-second gap on this, you can have a full uptime on this, which is just short of 1,000 spell damage, slightly over in fact. So that's a substantial boost on its own. If you're lucky, you'll have a very good consistent use of it. If not, shit can happen sometimes. Now, the monster set we're using is Xyn. Spell crit plus big breathing fire breath on single target with a 6-second duration and an 18-second cooldown. So there's a 12-second gap there. It's a big gap, but it's very, very powerful. And yes, your Engulfing Flames does boost this. Now, if you don't have access to this because you can't do Scale Call or Peak on Vet, then just go to Vaults of Madness or Banish Cells 2 and get yourself either the Jeff Helmet, which is more of the Inferno, or get Grofdar, because Grofdar is great all day long anyway. Either one of the two will be absolutely fine, but if you can get into Vet stuff, then of course, the harder Vet stuff, then of course Xyn is going to be really, really good for you. Either way, it's not the end of the world. Get whatever one is easiest for you to pick up first. Now, the back bar weapon is the Maelstrom Inferno. No, this does not need to be perfected. We have enough spell pen anyway. The first bonus on this is not necessarily relevant. Some very, very rare situations, you might get a slight bit of extra damage on the back bar if buffs and bonuses aren't applied properly, but overall, this isn't going to affect you at all. Go in normal. So, normal dungeon, normal dungeon, normal Maelstrom. Now, as you can see here, it's got weapon and spell damage on it, which is not going to make sense because we have it on the front bar. This is just here for demonstration purposes. This doesn't need to be weapon and spell damage. This needs to be a flame glyph if you're using this. If you are using a burning spell weave or, in fact, a flame staff full stop with this build, you want the weapon and spell damage glyph on the front. We have quite a short rotation. The whole duration of this should consistently be somewhat controlled while on the front bar, and then when you swap, it will be down, and when you come back, it'll be up again. That will mean that we can constantly fire the flame glyph from this on cooldown very, very fast with our Wall of Elements. If you're not too hot on your rotations, this is going to be a substantial increase to you. However, if you choose to, you can go right in the face of the enemy, and you can swap Burning Spell with Inferno for 2 daggers instead. You will have a heightened crit chance because they are daggers, and you get 8/12 for each one. And you want to change your glyphs. You want to change your glyphs to a flame glyph and a poison glyph. Then this one can be weapon and spell damage, because this will keep up the bonus all the time and be its strongest it can be. And these will fire 2 separate glyphs, which both fire a status effect that the DK can take advantage of, because we have a 50% increase. The style of play is up to you. Bear in mind, if you do have a dual wield, you won't necessarily always get more damage. It's just a dice roll, but you could get more crits more often, and you can't heavy attack to get magic back. You only get stamina back. So that is a very different style of play, but if you want to, you can. That's the difference with the glyph. 2 staves, make sure it's weapon and spell damage on the front, fire on the back. 2 daggers, make sure it's fire and poison on the front, weapon and spell damage on the back. Now, gear choices. The more advanced side of things. If you want to go full crafted, 100% crafted, apart from the monster set and the back bar weapon, you can go with mechanical acuity on the front bar and jewelry, or front bar and weapon and armor, if you want. This will allow you 100% crit chance for 5 seconds once every 21 seconds. Based on the rotation, we can guarantee this every second rotation. And when you get those extra strong whips in, this really does count. And on the body, you want Turg's Pact. You will have increased armor twice, plus max health, and all of your glyphs will have a 33% cooldown and 45% potency enhancement. So your back bar flame glyph, if you were using one, and your front bar weapon and spell damage glyph now have a massive uptime and output potential. But if you were using daggers of acuity instead at the front, then of course the same applies. You have a higher weapon and spell damage on the back, and 2 very strong glyphs on the front that fire almost as fast as they would if they were on a back bar weapon. If you use the full crafted setup of Turgs on the body and mechanical acuity on the weapons and jewelry, with a monster set of your choice of course, this can actually hit 80k all day long, sometimes 82, with crafted. With this particular setup that we're using here, you can hit about 84, 85, and if you choose to, you can, of course, go with Sororia instead of Burn and Spellweave. You can go with daggers or the Flame Staff. Just remember the glyph swap out if you do. If you go with Sororia, you will not have as much burst as Burn and Spellweave when you first introduce yourself to the fight, but you will have a more consistent uptime on 520 spell damage rather than 490, and of course you'll have Minor Slayer as well. So for that particular setup, you can actually hit about 88, 89, sometimes 90 if you're really, really lucky, but you've got to be really solid on your rotation to do it. Yes, you can hit 95 plus on a mag DK on a dummy, but that is only if you're building for that situation. This is designed for content with a very simple rotation. If you stick to that, you still get very, very good results. Now, champion points. Easy peasy. Lots of people are worried about these. Don't be worried. It's very simple. 3 different colors at the top there with 4 different gems in each. That's the key point of the champion points. Which 4 slottables do you take? The rest is inevitable. This crit bonus here, mag bonus, stam bonus, all this resistance stuff, all these are kind of light, white, yellow, or whatever bonuses, and they are passives, and they are inevitable for everyone. You will end up with them all, and then you'll have an abundance of points left. The only thing you can do with them is buy lots of slottables, but you can only slot 4 at a time. So don't worry, you will get these eventually. But above all, how do you get to what you need? So put 10 points into crit chance here, and that will unlock Backstabber. Backstabber you use when you're behind the target, you'll have increased crit damage. If you're not behind the target, swap it for this instead. Here, you want 10 points into your penetration bonus to unlock these trees. Deadly Aim for single target, this for damage over time, this for area of effect. The 3 combined plus Backstabber, or the 3 combined plus Fighting Finesse. That's it. Go for these slottables as soon as you can with 10 points here and here. The rest unlock at your own pace. Same for the red tree, 4 major slottables. Boundless Vitality, Ironclad, and Rejuvenation will give you recovery, armor, and health. Then you need this. Every kill you get will give you 1,500 Magicka back with no cooldown. So, start here with 15 points, then 10, then 10. Unlocked. You don't need many points at all. You can get started very, very quickly. The rest of these will happen over time. Spend your points when you get them. And the green tree is not essentially for combat. This is more quality of life, but there are 4 rather nice slottables that do work well in content. So, set yourself a path up here. Get the armpit buff because you'll never use a glyph again. Soul gem again, rather. Treasure Hunter. Increased quality of loot in chests. You'll find chests in content. This will increase the duration of your food. You use food in content. This will have a chance to not even use a potion. You use potions in content. And this makes you run faster if you're not in combat. In content, sometimes we're not in combat. Running from one fight to the next is now faster. Now, the rotation. There are a couple of different variants to this depending on how you set yourself up. Now, if you listened to the skill section, you will know the differences. Failing that, it'll be on the website anyway. So, if you're using this setup, if you're using your damage over time here, which you can swap for a damage shield if you're in trouble, it's up to you. You can swap this out, keep it simple, and not use any dots. But if you are using this, of course, I'm going to show you how to do that. And this dot can be swapped, again, for either one of the 2, depending on single target or AoE. But, essentially, if you're using the chains, you want to do this. You want your Beast Trap down, first of all. And you want to make sure, obviously, your Eruption goes down. Wall of Elements, Flame Breath, all that good stuff needs to be up. So we're going to put it in a specific order, but you also want to make sure your Flames of Oblivion is already active. So, don't panic and put all these in random orders. I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world if you do, but we're going to put them nice and clean. Beast Trap first, Flames of Oblivion once. You can actually cast that 3 times to start with if you really want to, because as you can see there, there's 2 eyes in my buff counters. That's your special whip, and your spell damage increase. But anyway, Beast Trap, Flames. Now, you want this down, 10 breath, Wall of Elements, swap bars. That's the order you're going to keep up for the rest of the time. To start with, yes, I know, Wall didn't land straight away and your light attacks aren't necessarily boosted, but once you get into the rhythm of it, everything will be nice and clean. When you get to the front bar, you want to do it in this order. Light attack, and Burning Embers, light attack Regeneration, light attack, Whip. You didn't see the backflip there because the timer ran out, but it will be. Then you've got two choices. You can either spam the whip 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Light, beast trap, swap, start again. Or you can use this. Light chains 3 times to buff that one. Whip afterwards. Now, when you get to the back bar, the second time, don't recast Eruption. You only use that every second rotation. So again, it should look like this from the front bar. Light Embers, Light Degeneration, then you'll get your special whip. Then 1, 2, 3, whip again. Where did that whip come from in the first place? Well, remember we have to double bar it, so we need Ardent Flame abilities. Beast Trap. Ardent Flame 1, Ardent Flame 2, Ardent Flame 3, whip. 1, 2, 3, whip. Now watch. Every rotation will guarantee that. Double backflip. 1, 2, 3, backflip. Full control over it. You'll do normal hits with your chains and actually have a bit of control, and it's free. And at the same time, you'll have that extra damage backflip whip. Now, just for argument's sake, if you want to know what sort of damage that does, the whip itself, I mean, on the dummy, you can sit there hitting sort of 40s, 30s, whatever, depending on the point of the fight. Sometimes up to about 48 per hit when you're low health. But the backflip whip can go in excess of 70 plus. So you want to make sure you can use that as much as possible. It can actually close the gap quite a bit. But again, that's up to you. If, however, you're not using that variation of the rotation, then you want to do something as simple as this. You can basically spam whips. So the same as you just saw, but instead of that, loads of whips with inner light on the bar. Or pretty much the same, except you add in another dot. So Beast Trap swap, Eruption, Flames, Breath, Wall, Embers, Degeneration, drop the mine. 1, 2, 3, 4, Beast Trap swap. Repeat, 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 repeat. That's it. So either one of the two is entirely up to you. This one is more strenuous on your resources. The other one is guaranteed sustainability forever. Whichever one you choose is your choice. Yes, of course, you will still get 1 backflip whip per rotation with this setup, and slightly more damage because you've got 2 dots running. But for simplicity's sake, if you want consistent damage without the big jumps and drops if something goes wrong, and to manage your resources more, the chain rotation all day long is still very, very good. And although this particular one that you can see now does actually hit about 88 to 90k, the chain rotation with the trial setup can actually hit around 85, 86, whereas the crafted version of either one of the two can both hit 80, 82 with no pressure whatsoever. So, now it's time for fashion. So, we are using the same as we did before, but I don't think this was ever on the website, however it's going to be now. We're using the Ebon Shadow hat, and we are using Welkanar Heavy chest and legs. Now, everything else is light Dramatha on the feet, hands, shoulders, and belt. The flame staff, of course, is the Ebon Shadow staff. It's very expensive on the market still to this day, but it's very, very cool. And we're using the Avnafan staff on the back just to keep it a little bit Khajiit-y. Is that a word? It is now. Now, the colors we're using, of course, did skip that bit, are mostly just black, to be fair. I mean, we are using a mixture of Void Pitch and Legate's Black, but you can use any of these, really. I mean, some of these are a bit grayish. This one's quite dark. It's pretty easy to unlock, and this one might take a bit of PvP, but it's up to you. I mean, essentially, you could just go with this all the time, but remember, it's got a purple tint to it, so you might not like that. But that'll be on the website as well. So hopefully it helped, hopefully it wasn't too boring, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. Of course, like I said, there are many, many options as far as gear is concerned. You've got crafted, dungeon, or trial. You've got flame staff or daggers, and you've got a simple rotation or a fully sustainable one that never runs out. Any one of those, no matter where you are in the game as a player, is capable of all the content in the game, even the hardest stuff. If you manage your rotation well, you keep up your resources, there's nothing you can't do. 80k is more than enough, especially for a crafted setup, and if you want to push for the 90 stuff, you still can. Anyway, thank you very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate support. If you are not subscribing on YouTube or following on Twitch, please do hit those buttons. They are free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website zoneandgaming.com, where all the written guides are, including this one. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.